Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Unreal 2 The Awakening for PC and Xbox. Now this was the sequel to the original Unreal, but it really doesn't have a lot to do with it story-wise, so just kind of disregard the sequel part and just say it's another Unreal game. But it was the first cross-platform game in the franchise in terms of the main line, and just plain Unreal. Unreal Tournament had also been released on a console as well, but this was the first one to be developed for both. It was released on PC in 2003 and then Xbox in 2004. Was developed by Legend Entertainment, and they don't exist anymore, so that's kind of telling, I think, in some ways. But obviously this game didn't have a lot of success to it. It really is very littly, like hardly anybody knows anything about it. So why was it really forgotten by time? I mean, especially since it brought the Unreal Engine 2 to the masses. Well, let's find out. Now, like I said, it runs on Unreal Engine 2, so for the time, it actually looked really, really good. All the textures were high-res at the time. I mean, they're not by today's standards, obviously. But in 2003, 2004, it looked really, really good. I mean, all the modeling was great, the animations were nice. And even still, the animations are still fairly good. And the modeling's still fairly good. It's the textures that kind of throw it all over the place. Environments look really nice for the time. It's very impressive to see. But then you come to the sound design, which is all over the place, like the original game. You can tell they didn't put a lot of effort into the sound effects. They're really just nothing impressive. They just kind of sound like generic weapon sounds, generic sci-fi-y sounds, that sort of thing. The voice acting is just average. There's really nothing remarkable about it. None of the characters are particularly memorable. So it ends up becoming kind of just this average presentation overall, apart from the visuals, obviously. Especially since the music is just kind of there, it does its job, and that's about it. You never really notice it. But really, it's the story and the gameplay that matter the most. You play as former Marine John Dalton, which is an incredibly generic name, by the way. But he's a marshal for the Terran Colonial Authority, and he's out in this far reaches of space that are away from all the real action of combat and such. And so he eventually gets called back into service to get these 7 pieces of an artifact that are thought to make this extremely powerful weapon when they're assembled together. And this plot ends up being just this hopelessly generic, hopelessly boring storyline. Because you sit there and you're just like, why do I care for most of the time? The characters are not well done. There's a couple that might have been interesting, but they never really go anywhere with it. I mean, their personalities aren't too bad. It's just that you want to know more about these characters, and you never really get it. I mean, you're playing as John the entire time, and he's just this very boring character. So the story itself, although it is way better told than the original Unreal, I'll admit that. The original Unreal had this really big problem of being extremely vague all the time and not really telling you what was going on. Whereas in Unreal 2, you do know what's going on the entire time. It is made very clear to you. And so that does help the pacing a little bit. But then you get to the gameplay. And here's where you start to see why people don't really remember this game much. It's an extremely generic first-person shooter. You basically just go from point A to point B, shooting anything in your path, and if you come across a switch, you might throw it. You might come across maybe a jumping puzzle or something like that, but it's really, really, really simple. The weapon selection is, like the original Unreal, fairly boring. You basically get weapons that are very generic sci-fi stuff. You get a crystal shooting assault rifle, but it's still basically just an assault rifle. You get a magnum, you get a stun gun kind of thing. It's not really a stun gun. It's I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's a dispersion pistol or something like that. It's really just unimpressive. Mostly just generic sci-fi weapons that really don't do a lot for you. They're not particularly beefy. They feel really underpowered in the long run, because you'll sit there and you'll wail on your enemies for quite a while, and it will seem like it take forever to go down. I don't know if it's just that they decided to make the weapons do barely any damage, or whether they made the enemies really tough, or whether I'm just playing on the wrong difficulty setting. I don't know. But still, that's just the way it goes. And so the weapons feel really underpowered, the gameplay feels kind of generic, but the biggest irk thing in this game, the one thing that just annoys me, is how slowly you move. You move like basically a turtle on Prozac or something. It's extremely sluggish. You never are able to dodge anything. You can, whenever you're jumping, it feels really sluggish and slow. Your movements take forever. It can take you 15 minutes to get from point A to point B, whereas in something like, say, I don't know, Call of Duty, which I know this is kind of a weird comparison, but like say in Call of Duty it would take you maybe 2 or 3 minutes to get to a location, it would take you 10 to 15 to get there in Unreal 2. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it feels that slow. And that becomes a major problem, because then you feel like the game drags on and on and on. And that's not supposed to be the case. I mean, Unreal, even the original Unreal, while it was kind of slow-paced, it was still fast-paced action. And this one doesn't feel fast-paced at all. It feels really slow and just boring in the long run. I mean, Unreal's always kind of been about this high-intensity action where just lots of stuff going boom and all this. Whereas in this one, it's just kind of like, moving along, look at the pretty scenery. And that's kind of it. It feels like a tech demo, and that's a major problem with it. Now, the weird thing is, on Steam, they don't include the extended multiplayer thing, which was actually the multiplayer segment of it. It was really separate, which that's just a weird way of doing things. So I don't know how the multiplayer was at all. I mean, I haven't tried it. But the single player is just ungodly boring, and that's what I'm rating here. And so I can't recommend it to anybody. It's just extremely boring. I give it a 2 out of 5. Thanks for watching.